She laughed as the glass shattered. Not mine, hers. Red wine all over the marble floor. It dripped off her heel like blood from a wound, and she just stood there, laughing, while everyone else at the party froze. I was already 3 steps away. It wasn't the wine. It wasn't the way she stumbled into that man, the one with the linen shirt and the smug eyes, or how his hand lingered a second too long on her back as he helped her. It wasn't even the way she smiled at him like he was some delicious secret. It was how she didn't look for me. Not once. I stood by the balcony doors holding a plate of salmon bites I never asked for, staring at my wife as she let another man wipe her wrist clean. She giggled, said something about clumsiness, and then tossed her head back like she was in a perfume ad. And I realized right then, I wasn't her person anymore. I was just the guy who drove her there. I don't even remember putting the plate down. I just walked, quietly, past the bar, past the string quartet, past 2 women whispering about someone's divorce. The city air slapped me in the face as I stepped out. No one noticed, not even her. She didn't come after me, but I waited anyway, sat on a bench 2 blocks down, watching strangers laugh under streetlights. An Uber pulled up next to me twice, both times for someone else. Hours passed. I didn't move. At 2:11 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Lorraine, where'd you go? I'm freaking out." Another message followed. "Are you okay?" And then, "Please come back." But it was too late, because while she was busy clinking glasses and playing charming, I had watched the truth drip down the stem of a wine glass. I had seen everything I needed. By morning, she was crying. But that's not even the shocking part. Not yet. I didn't sleep that night. I tried. I lay on the couch in my brother Elliot's basement, staring at the popcorn ceiling like it might collapse and bury me in something that felt simpler. He didn't ask questions. He just handed me a blanket, a bag of pretzels, and mumbled something about his cat not being vaccinated. I was too hollow to respond. I had walked out of that party expecting to feel rage, to burn with betrayal. But what hit me instead was this massive, suffocating silence. Not just from Lorraine, but from myself. Like I didn't even have the energy to feel what I was supposed to. At 7:42 a.m., my phone buzzed again. I hadn't looked at any of her texts since I left, but something made me pick it up. Maybe I thought it'd be an apology, a confession, something that would at least make the hurt feel justified. Instead, it was a photo. Lorraine, sitting on our bed, wrapped in her old college hoodie, her knees tucked up to her chest, her face red and soaked. Her eyes were wild, like she hadn't blinked in hours. The caption just said, "I'm sorry, please come home." It made my chest cave in. I still didn't know what she'd done exactly. There hadn't been a kiss, no words I could quote, but there had been something in her body language, in that open-mouth laugh, in the way she leaned into him, that stranger, like she was letting herself forget I existed. I returned to the house just after 9. She didn't hear the door. I found her on the kitchen floor, hugging a mug like it might disappear if she let go. She looked up when she heard my footsteps and jumped to her feet like she'd been electrocuted. Her voice cracked the moment she said my name, Carter, like it didn't belong to her anymore. "I didn't cheat," she said before I even opened my mouth. "I swear, I didn't do anything." I didn't ask her to explain, but she did anyway. She talked fast, like if she stopped for breath, the whole thing would fall apart. She told me Denton was new, that she was just being friendly, that she didn't realize how it looked. But the more she talked, the more her voice trembled, and the more I just stood there, motionless. Because I wasn't angry. I wasn't shouting. And that scared her more than anything. "You always accuse me of not seeing you," I finally said. "Last night, you didn't even glance around to check if I was there." Her lips quivered. "Because I thought you weren't." That hit me harder than I expected. Because maybe she was right. Maybe I'd been so invisible in her world lately that she had stopped expecting me to show up at all. But I had come. I had seen everything. And I had walked away not because I didn't care, but because I couldn't carry the weight of pretending it was normal anymore. She reached for me. I flinched. It wasn't deliberate. It just happened. like my body had learned something before my heart caught up. That small movement made her crumble. She backed away, buried her face in her hands, and started sobbing so hard I thought she might choke on it. "I didn't mean to make you feel replaceable," she whispered. "I didn't mean to forget you. But that's the thing with meaning. It doesn't fix the damage." And in that moment, as she sank to the floor crying harder than I'd ever seen, I stood there wondering how I became the kind of man whose wife forgot to look for him in a crowded room. The silence between us that morning felt louder than anything either of us had said. Lorraine eventually stopped crying, wiped her face with the sleeve of her hoodie, and just sat there on the floor, rocking slightly like she was trying to disappear. I didn't speak. I didn't even sit down. I leaned against the counter, arms folded, staring at the wall clock above the stove, counting the seconds like I was waiting for something to break. She tried to explain again, but it sounded like static in my ears. Her voice was hoarse from crying, her words running in circles. Something about Denton being flirtatious with everyone, how she didn't even notice how it came across, how I read into things too much. Maybe I do. But that night, I hadn't read anything. I'd seen it. And even if there was no kiss, no hotel room, no undeniable proof of betrayal, there had been something worse. Willingness, openness. I was about to leave again. Not storm out, just disappear the way I did the night before. But she stopped me. "Wait," she said quietly. "You can check my phone. If you really think something happened, just look." She held it out like a weapon, her hand trembling. I hesitated. I've never been the type to invade privacy, and to be honest, part of me didn't want confirmation of what I already feared. But I took it. At first, everything looked innocent. No messages from Denton. No weird photos. But when I opened her gallery, that's when I saw it, buried between screenshots of shopping lists and old cat memes. A video. It was from the night of the party. The video was only a few seconds long, clearly recorded by someone else, maybe one of her friends. In it, Lorraine and Denton were standing by the bar, both of them holding drinks, swaying slightly to the background music. He leaned in, said something into her ear, and she laughed. Then, and this is the part that made my stomach drop, he brushed her hair behind her ear. She didn't pull away. In fact, she leaned into it, smiling with a softness I hadn't seen in years. The clip cut off before anything more happened. But it was enough. Too much, really. I set the phone down gently on the table. She was watching me, eyes wide, as if waiting for an explosion that never came. Instead, I just nodded. Not in agreement, in acknowledgement. That moment had existed. It was real. And now, it lived between us like an unwanted guest we couldn't throw out. "I didn't realize someone filmed that," she whispered. "It wasn't what it looked like." I raised an eyebrow. "Then what was it, Lorraine? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you forgot you were married. Or worse, you remembered and didn't care." She opened her mouth, then closed it. No excuse came. The rest of the day was a blur. We didn't speak. Couldn't even look at her. Every corner of the house felt like it belonged to strangers. I sat on the back porch for hours, replaying that clip in my mind. It wasn't graphic. It wasn't overt. But it was intimate. And it wasn't meant for me. By sundown, I started packing a bag. She didn't stop me this time. She just sat at the kitchen table, hands clasped like she was praying. But no words came out. I think that was the moment she realized it wasn't just the marriage that was cracked. It was the foundation. Trust doesn't shatter like glass. It crumbles quietly, and you don't always hear it until it's too late. As I zipped up my bag, she finally spoke again. Just one sentence. "If you walk away now, I don't think we'll come back from this." I paused at the door, keys in my hand. Then maybe we were already gone. And with that, I walked out again. Only this time, I didn't plan on turning back. I didn't go far. That's the part no one tells you about leaving. It sounds so final when you say it. I walked out. But most of the time, you don't walk far. You don't get on a plane or move to another state. You end up 5 miles away in a second-rate motel that smells like old coffee and detergent. I didn't even pack toothpaste. The first night was quiet. The second was unbearable. I was too angry to miss her, but too broken to sleep. My thoughts ran in loops, the party, the laugh, the video. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. Was that really all it took? On the third morning, I got a message that hit me like a bat to the chest. It wasn't from Lorraine. It was from her friend Violet. "Can we talk?" she wrote. "You need to know something. It's not what you think." I didn't answer right away. Violet and I were never particularly close. She was Lorraine's drinking buddy, the kind of woman who wore fur-lined sandals and called everyone babe. But something about her message felt different, urgent. So I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop halfway between her place and mine. She looked nervous when I arrived. No makeup. Hoodie. Not her usual camera-ready self. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. As soon as I sat down, she leaned in and said quietly, "She didn't cheat, Carter, but she wanted to." That sentence sat between us like a grenade with the pin halfway out. I didn't respond. I just stared at her, waiting for the rest. "She told me," Violet continued, "weeks ago. She said Denton made her feel seen, like she was still desirable, that she missed being noticed." I swallowed hard. "So that makes it okay?" "No," she said quickly. "It makes it dangerous." But she didn't act on it. Not fully. She told him she was married. She pulled away before anything serious happened. That video you saw, that was the closest it ever got. "Close enough," I said, my voice like sandpaper. Violet sighed and took a sip of her coffee. "I'm not telling you this to defend her. I'm telling you because I think she's drowning. And I think you are too." I wanted to scream, to flip the table and walk out again. But I didn't, because she wasn't wrong. I was drowning, in doubt, in sadness, in the unbearable pressure of not knowing whether I was overreacting or just finally reacting at all. Back at the motel that night, I stared at the ceiling again. Same place, same broken man, but with a new thought in my head. What if emotional cheating is worse? What if the betrayal wasn't a single act, but a slow erosion of loyalty I never saw happening? What if she had already made the decision to move on, and I was the last to find out? Around 2 a.m., I got another message from Lorraine. "I didn't mean to make you feel invisible," it said. I didn't know how far I'd drifted. There was no apology, no plea, just that sentence. And for some reason, it hurt more than anything else. Because the worst part of being forgotten is realizing it didn't take much effort. I didn't answer Lorraine's message. I didn't need to. Her words haunted me on their own. I didn't know how far I'd drifted, as if all this had just been some emotional accident. Like she'd simply wandered too far into deep water, and I was supposed to throw her a life preserver. But what if she had known exactly what she was doing the whole time? What if I had just been her safe harbor until something more exciting passed by? 2 more days passed. I didn't check in. I didn't reply. I didn't tell anyone where I was. And still, she didn't come find me. That silence said more than 1,000 apologies ever could. But I couldn't stay in limbo. I had to decide whether to go back and try to rebuild something cracked beyond recognition, or leave for good and risk spending the rest of my life wondering if I gave up too soon. So I gave her a choice instead. I sent one simple message. "If you still want us to work, meet me at the place where we first said, 'I love you.' I'll wait an hour. If you're not there, I'll take that as my answer." It was 6:41 p.m. when I hit send. Cold air nipped at my face as I drove across town to the overlook where we once sat in my rusted '09 Mazda and watched lightning split the sky above the ridge. That was the night she whispered, "I love you," while holding my arm so tightly I thought she'd bruise me. Back then, she said she was afraid I'd leave. Back then, I never imagined she'd be the one to drift. I arrived at 7:08. I parked in the exact same spot we used to take photos in. For a while, I just stared at the horizon, thinking about how much of me had been poured into a woman who might have already moved on emotionally while I was still memorizing her coffee order. 7:15. No sign of her. 7:26. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I started convincing myself she wouldn't come. 7:43. My chest physically hurt. It wasn't heartbreak. It was weight. Like everything inside me had become stone. 7:59. Headlights. I didn't breathe until her car door opened. Lorraine stepped out slowly, like she wasn't sure she had the right to be there. Her face was blotchy, eyes rimmed red, hair barely brushed. No makeup, no performance. "I didn't think you'd actually wait," she said. I shrugged. "I didn't think you'd actually show." She walked over quietly, sat on the hood of my car like she had 1,000 times before, and stared at the same stars we used to name. Then, finally, she spoke. "I don't know what to say, because the truth sounds ugly, and I don't want to dress it up." I nodded. "Then don't. Just say it." She was quiet for a long time before she said the one thing I never saw coming. "I loved the way he made me feel, but I hated myself for needing that feeling." I turned to her. "So you admit it?" She swallowed hard. "I admit I wanted something I shouldn't have. I admit I kept trying to find that spark somewhere else instead of fixing what was broken between us. And I admit that I let myself believe you'd always be there, even if I looked the other way." Hearing it out loud didn't offer the clarity I thought it would. There was no dramatic swell of pain, no explosion, just a strange stillness. I stood up, walked a few feet away, and said without looking back, "The part that hurts most is knowing you had that space inside you, that craving, and you never once asked me to fill it." I didn't wait for a reply. I opened my car door and sat there, keys in the ignition, engine cold. She didn't beg. She didn't cry. She just stood there in the moonlight, arms folded like she was trying to hold herself together. And for the first time, I truly didn't know whether to stay or finally disappear for good. I didn't go home that night, not with her and not back to Elliot's basement either. I drove. For hours. No direction, no destination. I just let the empty roads and the hum of my tires do what therapy hadn't. Somewhere outside Middleton, I pulled into a rest stop and sat on a picnic table under a broken street lamp, staring at the stars like they owed me answers. I kept thinking about what Lorraine had said. I loved the way he made me feel. Not I loved him. Not even I wanted him. Just the feeling. And I realized, in that moment, that's what scared me the most. Because if it wasn't about him, then it could have been anyone. Any smile. Any hand brushing her hair. It wasn't about him, it was about what I had failed to be. And that kind of failure is personal. It eats at your wiring. You start to wonder if love was ever enough, or if the whole thing was always just one unmet need away from collapse. Around 5 a.m., I drove back into town and parked outside our house. I didn't go in. I just watched the lights in the windows, wondering if she was asleep or lying awake, imagining the worst. I must have sat there for nearly 20 minutes before I noticed a second car parked 3 houses down. Not a neighbor. Not familiar. A white sedan with tinted windows and a sun visor covering the dash. Something about it felt wrong. I got out and approached slowly. As I passed, I glanced at the rear seat and saw it. Folder. Thick. Overstuffed. Yellow with a red tab. That's when the passenger door opened. A man stepped out. Mid-30s, khakis, button-down shirt, badge on his belt. He didn't flinch when he saw me, didn't look surprised. "Carter?" he asked, like we were picking up a conversation we'd already started. I froze. "Who's asking?" He pulled a card from his pocket and handed it to me. "Private investigator." His name was Rylan, and apparently, Lorraine had hired him. I felt sick. "She reached out 3 weeks ago," he said calmly. "Said she thought you were hiding something, that she had a gut feeling. She thought maybe you were having an affair." My mouth dried out. "Are you serious?" He nodded, not unkindly. "I didn't find anything, but I kept tabs because she paid in full. She said she just needed clarity." I wanted to laugh, but it got caught somewhere between my chest and throat. She thought I was the one drifting, while she was out at parties, laughing too hard, leaning too close to men like Denton. She thought I was the risk. "She thought you were too quiet lately," he added. "Too calm." Said it scared her. I walked away before I did something regrettable. I got back in my car, slammed the door shut, and just sat there gripping the wheel. My knuckles turned white. My jaw locked. This woman who made me feel invisible for months, who let another man stroke her face in public, had secretly hired a PI because I was too calm? It was almost poetic. She had been searching for something to blame before I even gave her a reason. Maybe that's what people do when they're on the edge of betraying someone. They convince themselves the other person already did it first. That morning, I finally went home. Lorraine was in the kitchen, wearing one of my old sweatshirts. She looked up, startled, and before she could speak, I dropped the card from Rylan on the counter. Her face collapsed. I didn't need her to say anything. I just stared at her and whispered, "You didn't trust me. Even when I was breaking just to protect you from the truth." She opened her mouth. Maybe to explain, maybe to lie, but I didn't want to hear it, because in that moment, I wasn't sure which betrayal hurt more, the man at the party, or the fact that she went looking for a reason to stop believing in me before I ever gave her one. When I dropped the investigator's card on the counter, Lorraine didn't even try to explain it away. Her hands were trembling. Her lips parted, but no words came. And for once, I didn't fill the silence. I just let her sit in it. Eventually, she whispered, "I thought something was going on, because you stopped looking at me." It almost made me laugh. Not out of humor, but disbelief. I hadn't stopped looking at her. I had been watching her for months, desperately trying to read her face, her mood, her coldness. I was staring so hard at the woman she used to be, I didn't realize she was already becoming someone else. I didn't respond. I went upstairs to pack the rest of my things. But just as I reached for the drawer beside the bed, something caught my eye. A small velvet pouch tucked behind the books on her nightstand. I almost ignored it, but something about the way it was hidden felt wrong. Too intentional. Inside was a flash drive. No label. No explanation. Just a plain silver drive that felt heavier than it should have. I held it in my hand for a few seconds, debating whether to open it, whether I even had the right. But she had hired someone to watch me, to follow me, to dig into my life. Whatever line existed between us had already been crossed. I plugged it into my laptop in the hallway, sitting on the floor with my suitcase still half-zipped beside me. There were 4 folders. 3 were empty. But the last one, marked untitled, held one single video. I clicked. It was grainy, like it had been filmed on an old phone, and the angle was awkward. But I recognized the setting immediately, the office party. The same one from the video her friend Violet had shown me. But this one, it had sound. The clip started the same way. Lorraine laughing, Denton leaning in. But then, just as he brushed her hair back, I heard his voice clearly. "She doesn't have to know," he said. Lorraine paused, looked up at him, and her smile faded. "She's not the one I'm married to," she replied, quietly but clearly. Then she turned and walked away. That was it. Just 13 seconds. But it changed everything. Because that was after I had already walked out. After I'd seen them and assumed the worst. After I had spent the night replaying that exact moment in my head, believing she had chosen him over me. And yet, she hadn't. She'd stopped it. She'd said no. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the screen, trying to decide whether that made her innocent or just not guilty. Was the damage already done? Did it even matter that she pulled away at the last second? Was I supposed to forgive because she didn't follow through? Even if she wanted to? Downstairs, she hadn't moved from the kitchen. I walked back down, flash drive in hand, and placed it beside her. She looked up at me, eyes already brimming with tears. "I didn't know you'd find that," she said. "I saved it, because part of me thought one day you'd need proof." That I walked away. I sat across from her. No walls, no yelling. Just 2 broken people, finally staring each other in the face. "You still let it get that far," I said, not accusing, just exhausted. "I know," she whispered, "and I think about it every single day." She reached out not for my hand, but for the flash drive. "I kept it," she said, "because if we ever lost each other completely, I wanted something to remind me that I didn't choose him, even if, for a second, I thought I might." Her voice cracked on that last line, and mine did too, because suddenly, I didn't know if this was a story about betrayal, or two people who forgot how to fight for each other until it was almost too late. I didn't speak for a long time after Lorraine said those words. The room felt frozen in time, like the dust in the air didn't dare settle. She sat across from me, waiting, scared to hope, but too broken to beg. And maybe for the first time we weren't husband and wife or victim and villain. We were just two people sitting in the rubble of something they both helped destroy. I never thought I'd be the one holding the wreckage, I finally said. But now that I don't want to throw it away. Lorraine blinked, not understanding at first. Her fingers curled inward like she was afraid to move, afraid to believe it. But I meant what I said. Because something about finding that flash drive, about seeing her pull away, about watching her choose not to go through with it, even in the moment she was most tempted, made me realize how far we'd both drifted. Not just her. I had built walls too, quiet ones, and I had spent so much time believing I was the only one hurting that I forgot. She had been hurting too. We talked for hours that night, not fighting, not accusing, just talking, about the distance, the loneliness, the little cracks that turned into fractures. And for the first time in years, it felt like we were finally listening to each other, not just waiting to be heard. I didn't move back in right away. We both knew trust doesn't just snap back into place. But we went to counseling. We started small dinners, long walks, no phones. We left notes again. We asked real questions. And she never hit her phone again. Not once. Took time. More than I expected. But slowly, something new started to grow in the space where the old version of us had fallen apart. Something less perfect, but maybe stronger. And today, months later, I can say this. I'm glad I walked out of that party. I'm even more glad I chose to walk back in. Because sometimes rock bottom isn't the end. It's where you finally stop pretending and start rebuilding for real.